there's got to be an oval-shaped vanity somewhere in your basement.
I can
That feels like
assure you
something
we
that-
have several.
Yeah. Welcome to Noise Floor, a podcast about music and our favorite artists' discographies. I'm Troy Sennett.
And I'm Matt Kistler.
And today we are talking about the third Bright Eyes album, Fevers and Mirrors. This is an album that came out in May of 2000 on Saddle Creek, like just about every Bright Eyes record for a very long time, and was produced and mixed by Mike Mogis, who's also, I think, kind of become an official member of the band by this point. But before we talk about the album, this is our 50th episode, and that is pretty cool.
That's really cool. We made it.
We've been doing this for just about a year, I guess, is what that means.
Yeah, I think we're releasing an episode on almost exactly our year anniversary, which makes sense since that's how years work. But
It is.
it's fine.
But yeah, I figured we should point that out because it's a nice milestone.
It is.
I'm still enjoying doing this podcast, despite sometimes having to pause for half an hour in the middle of an episode to settle a baby. But
Listen, life happens, and the podcast can wait.
that's true. But yeah, this has been fun, and I think it will continue to be fun.
I am looking forward to at least 50 more episodes.
Hopefully.
I hope so.
500 more episodes. We'll see.
500 more episodes. We will do Bruce Springsteen, guys. It's just going to take us a whole year.
No, you know what we're going to do, relevant to this episode, is a Jandek series that's going to take us 3 years to get through.
Yeah, no, we're not going to do that, actually.
I did not know who Jandek was until like 3 days ago.
I had to do a fair amount of research to get any context on Jandek. I know I've heard the name before. I feel like many people at the radio station have like talked about him, maybe not in positive ways necessarily.
That is a real like works at a college radio station artist, I think.
I think you're correct.
I feel like of the people who know his name from more than just the fact that Bright Eyes covered a song of, or well, I guess wrote a song about him, that I would guess upwards of 75% of those people do or have worked at a college radio station.
Yeah, it is. That is 100% true, and probably currently volunteer at a community radio station, or they all are at WZRD or whatever the wizard is actually called.
Yeah, but we're here to talk about Bright Eyes and specifically Fevers and Mirrors. Was this an album that you remember when it came out or got into early on, or is this like an important Bright Eyes album for you?
It feels weird to say not really. I'd listened to like songs from this here and there. Like I'd obviously heard The Calendar Hung Itself, probably the most pointedly named song on this record, perhaps. I mean, there are a lot of those, in fairness, throughout the Bright Eyes catalog. But yeah, no, this is not one that I had really sat down with until fairly recently. But kind of coming back to it as its own like focused point now. I see why a lot of people love this record. I had a pretty good time with it. This feels way more like a record than anything else we've talked about so far. I don't want to say that Letting Off the Happiness didn't feel like a record, but it feels more solidified, and a lot of that is obviously helped by Mike Mogis. From what I can tell, technically not a member of the band, but ostensibly a member of the band at this point. Obviously, he goes on to officially be in the band, but like his contributions cannot be overstated on this record, and I think it really kind of pulls the whole thing together. We've talked previously about what Conor could probably use most of the time as a good editor, and I think Mike tries his best on that front, at least with making everything cohesive and not feel like it's wandering off in weird directions.
Yeah, I think that's a good way to look at this album. Is it is it's I mean, Letting Off the Happiness is an album for sure. But this one feels like a more it has a stronger vision and is a little more cohesive thematically, I think. It just feels like a band that is able to, is comfortable with each other and able to explore like kind of um the range of their powers. And I mean, so I guess this album is, I think, pretty well liked by most Bright Eyes fans. I think a lot of people feel like this is where they really become Bright Eyes, at least kind of the Bright Eyes that they would be for the next decade or so. Um, but I think there's a bit of a critique of it where it still kind of feels like Connor only has one sort of mode that he's in. Do you feel that at all on this, or do you feel like there's a decent amount of variation on it?
I mean, this is a critique Connor has of himself, so I'm not sure I can question that. Um, I do get the impression I didn't like, by and large, I didn't try to like tell myself, okay, this song is about this, because all of the songs are about being depressed. Like that is like 100% true. I do. I feel like what sets like this early Bright Eyes stuff apart from I don't know if you read the Stereo Gum retrospective that they did, I guess 5 years ago now. But the author was talking about how Bright Eyes, like kind of in this era, got perhaps unfairly, perhaps not unfairly, kind of lumped in with the greater emo scene. And I understand that to a degree, but at the same time, like I feel like the ways in which Connor, by and large, like not all the time necessarily, approaches kind of talking about, you know, the ways that he feels and the ways that he feels he has been wronged. Like there's a straight up song about or on here about how mad he is at an ex. Like it's a thing. It happens. But I feel like I feel like his songwriting style is just kind of what sets him apart. Like his lyricism is like borderline pretentious at times. I think that's not an unfair thing to say. Like there's a whole fucking fake interview on this. But like there's an amount of self-awareness around all of that too that I think like makes it work in a way that it might not for somebody who's less of a good writer than Connor is.
Yeah, like I think because part of the idea of the fake interview, which we will certainly talk about, is like the it feels like he is sort of making fun of people who are trying to interpret these songs as anything deeper than they are on the surface, but which is like, sort of trying to poke fun at himself to undermine the self seriousness of the album a little bit, but it also like adds to the pretension of it, I think, in a way. Which I don't necessarily find off putting. I think it's kind of a funny thing to do. It's not like he does it on every album or anything. It's here's
Right.
just one. This is I think it's a fun idea, and it's 10 times funnier when you realize that it's not him who's like being interviewed, that it's was it Todd Fink from The Faint and one of the guys from Lullaby for the Working Class who are just
Yeah.
I don't know if they wrote this or they're improvising it or whatever, but like, it's funnier that they're also making fun of him and he knows it and then they know it, and I feel like everyone's in on the joke in a way that makes it like some the contemporaneous review of this in Pitchfork that kind of panned it is like, I think, very mad at
Oh yeah.
the some of the what Connor's trying to do with this interview thing, and the which, I mean, if you have not heard the album, the second to last song on the album has a very surreal fake radio interview with basically other friends voicing Connor and an interviewer, and it is a strange thing to put like in the album, but yeah, I think it is. I think it is meant to add some levity to an album that is quite dark, and also to like I said, to both undermine it and sort of like play into the pretension of the record, I think.
Yeah. I think there is a degree of self-awareness here that like either other bands that have tried to do this type of thing in the time since, because this is obviously a highly influential album. There are a lot of people who are very famous today who were probably launched by this album effectively. But like I think a lot of like the maybe immediate contemporaries maybe didn't quite have that same degree of like, I get that I come off like this. I am still like, I guess for lack of a better way of saying it, speaking my truth, but I get how it sounds, man. Like, it's not lost on me.
Yeah, and I kind of want to go back to what you were saying about how Bright Eyes was lumped in with the emo scene, because to me, I feel like that happens a little bit later after this album, especially on I'm Wide Awake It's Morning, but
Yeah.
but I mean, obviously, like, insofar as you think of Cursive as like an emo adjacent band too, of a more of a, maybe of a different era, in a lot of this Omaha stuff, it feels like is emo adjacent, but I mean, I listen to this record and like I hear hardly any of the hallmarks of the emo of 90s emo or what emo would become in the 2000s. I mean, you obviously hear, the influence that it has on the more like Americana tinged emo of like the last decade or so. I mean, off the top of my head, like Pine Grove is the obvious band that just feels like they're pulling straight from this.
Sure.
But I think you're right that it feels like that connection is a sort of like media or fandom, concoction. Like I think my feeling about this record is, which first of all, I had never heard before as a confession. This was my first time like hearing this album. Like this one and Letting Off Happiness were the two like big blind spots for me in their catalog. But to me, like it really does feel like a product of a somewhat isolated, insular Midwestern scene with a guy who is very depressed and has a lot to say about it, which I think is kind of how you can describe a lot of this early Bright Eyes stuff.
For sure, yeah. Well, like this is something that like is specifically gotten at in, I mean, a little bit in the interview, and just kind of in, I mean, I think several Bright Eyes songs up to this point, but there's at least one or two in kind of this greater time period of songs that we're going to talk about, where like there's this, and this is something that I think a lot of people experience, where you don't understand why the fuck you're depressed, and that like you feel like you have done something wrong, because like you grow up having this like good home life, or you might have like more privileged circumstances than like people who are not depressed, and that like that wears on you, and I can tell it wears on Conor a little bit. Like why the fuck am I like this? I don't understand what is going on. I'm trying my best to not be like this, but here I am. And like that's like as much as like I don't want to be reductive, like that's kind of a treasure trove of like shit to write about in a lot of ways.
Right. And that's like, I think that's what Ian Cohen is getting at in the retrospective Pitchfork review, or he says that what does he calls it, a record you're meant to commiserate with, or at the very least let its misery make your own seem kind of manageable. And I think the sort of implication there is, even if you don't like really know what to do with it, at least like, hearing someone else in feeling similar, which is, I mean, the draw to a lot of emo for a lot of people is just to hear your feelings sung back to you in a a better way than you're able to say it yourself.
Yeah, well, I mean, this is a classic thing. Like when you don't have the words to describe what you're feeling, you feel worse about it. Like having language to ascribe to it, like whether it be poetic, lyrical, or just like literally a word that you didn't know you had at your disposal, like that almost instantly like makes things make more sense for you. And like that's definitely a thing with Bright Eyes. I do kind of want to pull the direct quote from the Stereo Gum retrospective, because I think this kind of speaks to the like how do we get here at quote unquote Bright Eyes is emo. And it's, emo was a fungible concept in 2000. No bands wanted to be called emo, and yet the idea a whole genre built around sensitive, poetic fumbling seemed new and exciting and expansive, not like something to be ashamed of. Parentheses, we thought Modest Mouse and the Dismemberment Plan and At the Drive-In were emo too. And parentheses.
The Dismemberment Plan. What a great band.
What a great band. At the Drive-In, also a great band. Probably closer to traditional emo, or at least first wave emo, than any of the other bands that we talked about. But,
Yeah,
whatever.
or at least they played with all those bands in that scene.
Right, yeah, exactly. Yeah, lyrically definitely not in the same wheelhouse, but like sonically coming from the same roots.
Yeah, I watched that new documentary, The Last Scene, the other day, and there are some great At the Drive-In stories in that.
Oh man, I gotta watch that one.
Yeah, I got things to say about it, but we don't have to go into it right now. But we should get into the songs on this album, because there's also a lot of songs in this era that we want to talk about.
For sure, let's do it.
So the album opens up with a spindle, a darkness, a fever, and a necklace, which in traditional Bright Eyes fashion actually starts not with the song, but with a clip of a kid reading from a book called Mitchell is Moving, which is about a dinosaur who is moving to a new house or in a new town, and it then it becomes like a kind of, again, another typical Bright Eyes opener, in that it's kind of a slow plucked acoustic guitar track. It sounds really good. But what do you think of this one?
I like this one a lot. As I was reading kind of like both contemporaneous and like retrospective like reviews of this record, seems like people don't like the Mitchell is Moving bit. I think it's kind of great. And I think that's because like as I like watch like my friends' kids and like other folks like older kids growing up, like it kind of reminds you that like you have these big feelings as a kid, and like you don't really stop having them, they just get less intense. Like your friend is moving away and they're making it seem like not a big deal, but it's really impacting you and you don't really know how to express that. Like that's a thing that still happens to me today, man. Like more often than it used to.
I think the maybe the thesis of Bright Eyes is that the feelings don't get less intense. In fact, maybe they get more intense.
Yeah, they get different and maybe more frequent.
Yeah, and I like that as a tie-in to kind of what this record is about. And I also like, I gotta say, this is like top 3 least annoying Bright Eyes intro bits.
That's a good take. I like that.
Yeah, I don't mind this one at all. I think it's a decent song. It introduces a lot of the imagery that's going to recur throughout the album. One being, I think, this idea of turning on a spindle. This idea of like beautiful movement, even though there's no freedom to it. Or I guess kind of like the idea of a music box or a what do you call it? Like ballerina. You know what I'm talking about.
Yeah, that's a music box. I think it's still one of those.
Yeah, which I think is a thing that kind of recurs throughout the album. Really, the first 2 songs just have like these titles that are just like lists of images that kind of set up the themes of the record.
Yeah, for sure. Like there are insofar as like we're talking about like this as a record as opposed to a collection of songs. Like this album has a lot of recurring images. Like we've kind of already touched on like the recurring theme kind of being this general like idea of dealing with one's mental health, but like we get these clock images all the time. We get a lot of we get the fever, the mirror mentioned a lot, and like I know mirrors at the like even at this point in our collective history in 2000 are like very tied to a specific like metaphor, but like I don't know that necessarily makes it less effective in this context.
Yeah, it's he's using them in ways that they've been used for hundreds of years in literature, but they fit right in with what he's doing on here.
For sure.
I really like the last line of this song. Maybe the sun keeps coming up because it has gotten used to you and your constant need for proof.
I was hoping we weren't moving on yet because I wanted to talk about that line.
Yeah, it's a great lyric.
It is. It's a really great lyric, especially coming after like a turn like you don't depend on all that shit I use to make my moods improve. Like yeah, the whole song leading up to this, just it's pretty down, but like the specific use of the phrase "has gotten used to you" is like maybe the sun comes up and then tying it to yourself or a specific person is like a specific brand of like, I don't know, this is getting this is getting to be something I don't like, but like having that turn into because it's gotten used to you is such a I don't know how to like phrase this specifically, but it is a novel turn on something that could have gone a completely different direction.
Yeah. Well, I mean, you'll find reviews that call that narcissistic.
I don't think it is at all. Like I see where they're coming from, but I think specifically the last half of that line makes it not that at all.
Yeah, it is definitely one of the more like striking images, I think, in a song that's kind of full of striking images.
Yeah, for sure.
After that is a scale, a mirror, and those in different clocks, which is sort of a shorter, louder song, kind of driven by this rousing organ part. That is also again another sort of introduces many of the recurring images, and then I guess kind of gets into this idea of like one's insignificance in the universe, which maybe is sort of a turn from that last lyric in the last song.
Yeah, definitely. Like it. And like, kind of coming back to the like, is that narcissistic? Like, I don't think this album has one bit of believing that the narrator is the most important person in the universe at all.
Yeah.
Like, insofar that like we are all our own experiences and that is all we can actually have, sure. But like, that's everybody, man. Like, it's not that serious. I like this one a lot. We are plowing through these lyrics on this track, though.
Yeah, there's a lot of them, and they come fast. I really like the way the song sort of gets into the concept of vanity, because obviously a mirror is one of the in the title of the album, one of the more significant images. But the like, what is the lyric? You can't. I know the disease that the doctors can't treat. You contract on the day you accept all you see is a mirror, and a mirror is all it can be, a reflection of something we're missing. This idea of only seeing in others what you wish you could be, and thinking less of yourself for that. But then it turns into this lyric that is, where is it? In a room in the house where the light's never been. I found that as an interesting like sort of contrast, because if there's no light, then a mirror can't work and you can't see outside of yourself.
Right, yeah.
I don't know. I like how he builds these songs. I'm always kind of wishing there was more choruses.
Yeah, this is very through composed for the most part. And like half the song is like just an outro, which is fine, like it works, but
yeah, I mean, I guess that's the thing is that, we talked about like, does he really only have one mode? But like, I think he finds ways to structure the songs differently and to make each one kind of surprising in its own way.
Yeah.
Next up is The Calendar Hung Itself, which I think is kind of the song from this album that was kind of the hit, quote unquote. Or like the one that is the one that
you can get for something like this.
Yeah, it's the one that is kind of endured. I think it still gets played live fairly often, if I remember.
That seems right. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it's kind of one of the most rocking songs in their discography to this point. Has kind of a cool off-kilter beat that I really like. What do you think of this one?
I mean, I like this one quite a bit, and it's one that I'm more familiar with since they play it live, and since it has that incredibly striking title. Yeah, I think there's quite a bit on this song that I really enjoy. Like there's a lot of percussiveness in this song, and like that kind of lends to the energy of it. I really like that there's an interpolation of "You Are My Sunshine" in here that does not even attempt to use the melody of that song.
Yeah.
And I like I know it. I mean, it's probably partially because it's possible that they tried for that and it didn't work. But it feels like an intentional choice because like it's not really trying to invoke the mood of that song. It's trying to subvert it. Which I think is pretty cool. I also wrote down Leonardo DiCaprio pointing meme. She had eyes bright enough to burn me. I don't know if that's anything, but I thought it was funny at the time.
Well, yeah, he just really likes using the phrase "bright eyes" or some variations upon it in lyrics. I can't remember how long that continues into the career.
Yeah, I don't really know where it stops because it kind of does at a certain point.
Yeah. And this, the song, as we get into the last verse of the song, there's more clocks, there's more calendars, this idea that like, of time just kind of, continuing to drag on no matter whether you're around or not, which is sort of the idea that the song is contemplating.
Yeah. And I mean, we end on as close to a positive note as we can get in a song like this, I think.
Right.
Where you're being pulled up by your friends and loved ones, which is nice.
Yeah. Next up is Something Vague, which is a song that's kind of structured in a way that he and Mike really seem to like in this era, which is like an acoustic section, a loud full band section, and then another quieter section, but with no real repeated lyrics or anything. I think this is a pretty good song. Kind of based around a lot of like dream imagery, I think, with some cool grooves in it.
Yeah. I think the dream part is like I know people often say that you shouldn't write about dreams, but like I think the way that Conor delivers that section, like how like wild it gets vocally, totally sells it, and I don't care that he is describing a dream that I otherwise may or may not care about.
Yeah, I don't have a real problem with like dream imagery in songs. There's times where I think it's like it is. I think it's usually better in a song than in like a movie, where I find a lot of sort of dream imagery, non-David Lynch. Lynch is good at it, but like many like dream imagery or dream sequences in movies that just kind of don't work. But in a song, I don't really mind it because I think it is doing what a dream kind of does to you when you think about like, well, there's these images and they might not all make sense together, but maybe they tie back in some way to something I was thinking about or concerned about or worried about. And like that's kind of how Conor structures a lot of his songs anyway, where it's a lot of sort of disparate images that kind of come together to build the theme.
Yeah. And I think like the language itself works on like you get to the end of that quote unquote second verse as it's marked in Genius. I am not trying to like actually structure these songs in my head, but you get to the I hang like a star fucking glow in the dark, etc. part. That is real striking. It's real bleak, my man.
Great vocal moment on maybe one of the best on this album.
An incredible vocal moment. That is maybe the most pain we've heard from Conor thus far.
Yeah. Then after that we get to The Movement of a Hand. I didn't skip a song. Which is like, this is a real dark sounding song. Sort of anchored by like is it a Rhodes or a Wurlitzer, some kind of electric piano melody.
Yeah, it's an electric piano of some kind. I think it's credited as a Rhodes.
Yeah, and I think this is where you kind of get the dancing doll or the music box imagery comes back in this one.
Yeah, I like that kind of like anchor like arpeggio situation going on. We get some more like another like kind of image that recurs through this album is pouring water. We get a bit of that here, but yeah, overall just like very haunting. That was like my big last note was this one. It really is haunting.
Yeah, it almost is one of those things where the sort of second half of the song kind of feels like it's building up to like a hopeful image or like a talking about joy and sort of this sort of overwhelming sense of it. And then, but then it's like it turns at the end, so you finally understand the movement of a hand waving goodbye, when there's actually like this great sadness to the even the joy that you're experiencing on this sort of this drive that he's describing.
Yeah, well, I mean, and when you get to a line that starts because you finally understand, you feel like that is continuing to lift you to something. They really wait until the last minute to bring you back down.
Right. It's what there's the mineral lyrics. Like, I finally understand what they mean when they talk about joy, which is like where I thought that line was going.
Yeah, exactly.
But it goes in a much darker direction.
Yeah. And like not nearly as dark as it could have, admittedly, but still pretty like you just kind of go, oh,
right. Yeah. After that is Arionette. Another one that I think is kind of lasted from this album. I believe they play this one live pretty regularly still.
Yeah, this one I think is still maybe not a live staple, but fairly common on set lists.
Yeah, it's a kind of a sprawling, slower track with a lot of cool like production and soundscape stuff going on. It's kind of the lyrics are kind of structured in an interesting way that it's like each sort of stanza is about like a group of people, but defined by a certain personality trait. Which I thought was a kind of an interesting way to build the song.
Yeah, I liked this kind of I kind of read the structure as like these different I put not personifications but like maybe materializations of these like kind of abstract concepts.
Yeah.
And I think it's really cool. I hesitate to say because of the nature of it, but I really like the sad act like lepers. They stick to the shadows. They long to ring bells, warning to tell of their coming. That again, very bleak, but like a very striking image.
Yeah, well, and that sort of connects to like the idea that like you learn to that they long to ring the bells of warning. It's like this idea that like you sort of lean into the depression or the misery or whatever, which is like, kind of one of the feelings of this album. There's something, I think there's something kind of like that going on there.
Well, and the very next line is so that the pure can shut their doors. Like, you don't want this to wear on other people. Like, you want this to be kept to you.
You don't want to inflict it on anyone else. You need to experience it alone, or with like an emo record.
Oh yeah, exactly.
Did you read any of the sort of interpretations of the name Arionette or that character's significance?
I did not. Tell me more.
Oh, I mean, there's just for one, it comes up in the fake interview at the end of the album where they're like, who is this person, but it's like, well, it's just an image, it's a lot of people or whatever, which I mean, whatever, it makes sense. But there's some kind of analysis of the, because it's not a name that is like common or anything, and
no.
Theories that it's a sort of a combination of aria plus marionette, which you get sort of which ties back to the music box thing with a basically a puppet to a song. But then there's something where like there's some Greek joke that phonetically sounds like Arionette.
Huh.
There's some ties, you could tie it back to Ariadne and Greek myth, and like there's a lot of you can read a lot into what the meaning behind that name, or how it might have been, how Conor might have arrived at it, which I think is interesting, but not like essential to enjoy the song.
Yeah, especially since like it's so interesting to. Maybe interesting is the wrong word. I feel like I'm overusing that on this episode, but it struck me that like we have an invented character who does recur like in other places outside of this record, who like doesn't necessarily like have any like traits assigned to them. They just kind of exist, and like that's it. It's so kind of given all of the other bands we've talked about thus far who like use names in songs, and that kind of like lends a degree of specificity, in addition to any like supplemental talking about this person. we don't get a lot of that here. Like it is a name to fill a space, it seems like, in a lot of ways, but it also feels like it has significance.
Yeah, for sure. After that is When the Curious Girl Realizes She is Under Glass, which is this kind of weird sounding, jaunty, roomy song that apparently is meant to sound like you're eavesdropping on a neighbor who's playing it, which is kind of a funny concept for a production. But I think it's a pretty good song.
I think it is a pretty good song. Apparently that was like inspired by something off of Bjork's debut, where like there's a recording where she's in a party and then she walks out and closes the door. I think that's a fun little point of inspiration.
Diegetic sound in your album.
Yeah, well, I mean that's a trick that Conor uses a lot, especially in this era. I think, like, I feel like I have that note, like, oh, they're doing another Neighbor song on a couple of tracks here. But yeah, I mean, I like how it sounds. I always love the sound of like a piano in a room. So extrapolating that one room over clearly is appealing to me.
Yeah. Did you listen to so there's also on one of the various EPs or 7-inches is the When the Curious Girl Realizes She's Under Glass Again, which is just kind of the sort of played it straight full band arrangement of this song. Do you have a preference one way or the other?
I kind of like this one a little more just because it feels more novel. I think the more straightforward version does kind of lend itself to like focusing on the lyrics a little more. But I still think this version's a little more fun.
Yeah, I think so too. I like there's a lyric in the song that I really like. Oh, just the last line, the curious girl with a look on her face of surprise as she stares out from under her display case. This idea that like it feels like it ties back again to the spindle and the music box and the idea that like you can think that you're free because you're moving, but you're actually stuck.
Yeah.
After that is Halai, 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 Halai.
Wow, you got that one. Nice.
I did. I was reading it. But I think this is a really good song. This one feels like they're really leaning into the alt country influences, which I think is just a good lane for them. I assume Mike Mogan is playing all the pedal steel on here, and I think he's a very good pedal steel player. I just really like this one a lot.
Yeah, literally one of my notes is, oh yeah, pedal steel time. There's a vibraphone on this track too, which I also love. The production on this one is pretty great, honestly.
Yeah, and it's also has one of the more, I guess, straightforward attempts at a chorus. I don't know, attempts. Like it is a successful chorus. Like the lyrics is changing a little bit each time, but it's one that I was like, oh, I can sing along to this one, which is not something that you really get with a lot of these early Bright Eyes songs.
Yeah, definitely. It always feels it's weird when like normal structure feels novel in an artist's catalog.
Right. Yeah, I don't know. I think it's again another one of the stronger ones from this record.
Yeah, I like this one quite a bit. There's some fun vocal stuff. That well ha 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 is is an odd one, but I kind of like it. But the way he sings suffering on You Said You Hate My Suffering, which I'm not going to try to imitate, is real raw in a way that I think only Conor can do.
I can't do a good Conor imitation either. I'm not even going to try.
yeah, hard same. That stands for the rest of the series too.
Yeah. Then we've got The Center of the World, another song kind of based around a plucked guitar and an organ chord that then builds into like a big rockin' thing. This was the song where at this point where I was just like, this must have been Jeff's like favorite record growing up. For our friend and bandmate Jeff Schaller, because he just the way that Conor sings in the middle of the day on this sounds like a very specific thing that Jeff would do in Harder to Fall songs, and it makes me like it a lot.
Yeah, this one's cool. I put down like this one really feels like we're super in storyteller mode, like we're weaving a tale, like sitting on a little stool talking to a bunch of kids. Maybe not kids, but
Yeah, say this it gets a little dark at the end for me.
it's German kids. It's fine.
Sure.
They're
Yeah,
used to it.
because yeah, this like straight up ends on like really the last couple stanzas of the song, from like the when you drive home to your place from the job that makes you sleep. I think that entire section after that is really powerful. Again, you've got more like sort of the idea of frames around her face, kind of similar to the glass case or the music box recurring imagery. But then it ends with like just taking a lot of sleeping pills and not waking up, and this very like disconcerting, this isn't happening thing at the end.
That this isn't happening freaked my bean a little bit, which I knew it was coming because I was literally looking at the lyrics when I listened to it, but I was like, oh god. It's really effective.
Yeah. And like, I don't know, because maybe it's just because I am not like, this is not an album that I like relate to, although I can imagine it would be that the kind of thing would be even more powerful if like you can relate to those feelings. But like I see how you could get really deep into sort of the emotions of this record. I think just maybe discovering it later in life, it is not as like, visceral to me, but I see the power in it.
Yeah, definitely.
Next up is Sunrise Sunset. I think it's kind of a really interesting dynamic song that is sort of, I guess I would say, kind of about just the repetition of everyday life, and like despite like all the cycles that you go through, the extremes are kind of the same.
Yeah, I definitely agree. It's the backdrop for this song is very not odd, but like it's like a very like pa pa type song.
Yeah, a
which
3/4 beat there, or waltz thing.
Yeah, like you're at a dark carnival or something like that. Yeah, I don't know. I feel like there's some cool like vocal delivery stuff in here, especially the like real rapid, but everybody knows that this is all about the things that get stuck inside of your head. Yeah, I don't know. I put down that this one has like kind of a musical theater quality to it, it feels like.
Yeah, I can hear that.
Yeah, like I don't want to draw that comparison too much because I feel like I have done that before, maybe already on this series. But when it hits, it hits.
Yes, it does.
But yeah, we also get an Arionette mention on this track as well.
Yeah, which because the song Arionette kind of ends with like a "Please stay with me," and then this one ends with a "Where are you, Arionette?" So that's something has gone wrong in between those two moments.
Yeah.
Then you've got an attempt to tip the scales, which is, I feel like this and the interview and Song to Pass the Time all kind of work together as like an extended closing track.
Yeah.
They're all connected, obviously, in a pretty specific way. But this is mostly an acoustic song with like a nice little shaker. I really, really like this song. This was one where I was like, oh, if I had heard this when I was a teenager, this would have been like so many away messages on AIM, and like this is a song I probably would have cried to.
Oh yeah, 100%. Like the line that the title comes from. So we trade liquor for blood in an attempt to tip the scales is just like that's some real visceral shit right there.
Yeah, I think you lost what you loved in that mess of details. That was the one that got me.
That's also real good. There are a lot of great away messages on this one.
that whole section.
Yeah.
But then you get and then you get sort of a theme that has been recurring in Bright Eye songs, more so on the last album than this one. But winter's gonna end. I'm gonna clean these veins again, so close to dying that I can finally start living. This idea that like as seasons change, maybe that the passage of time, you'll heal a little bit.
Yeah. I worry about the phrasing on clean these veins again. I assume that it is like in reference to going through withdrawal. But
yeah,
there are other connotations that I think are informed by me listening to people who were inspired by Bright Eyes. Yeah, it's fine. Everything is fine. It's good.
But yeah, and so then like, oh, I guess the other thing that we've kind of been skipping around. There's so many lyrics to talk about on this. We've kind of been going quickly through these songs, but the idea that like, yeah, once we were gone, who's going to care if we were ever here at all, which again ties back to like this sort of like nihilistic streak in this album, or this idea that like you are insignificant in the world, or you're feeling insignificant in, you know, the grand scheme of things, which, you know, kind of comes to a head here.
Yeah.
Which is like, I feel like I'm playing it to sort of conflicting themes, that this idea of insignificance, but also this idea that maybe time will heal. I don't know. Does that feel like it's those are too disparate to connect in the song?
I don't think so. I think like with most things, both are definitely true all the time.
Yeah.
Like, I mean, obviously, you know, Connor is experiencing all these things, not necessarily all at once, but in succession at very least. And I think it's possible to feel both those ways at the same time, like to not. I mean, I think this is something that we kind of talked about a bunch with the last record. This kind of like push and pull of like everything feels awful, but I want to try to make it better, and I know that I have in the past to at least some degree. And I think that's kind of where the time heals all wounds stuff kind of creeps in.
Yeah. I think that makes sense. So in the back half of the song is this interview that we've been talking about sort of on and off throughout this, which is you know, worth listening to once, because it is kind of fascinating and strange, and I think the surreal elements of it are sort of produced and done in really fun ways. I don't know that it's something that I will like. I mean, I certainly did skip it when I went other times after the first time I listened to the album. I feel like I kind of got the gist the first time, but I think it's I can't say that I've ever heard anything else quite like this on another album.
No, I have never heard a fake interview outlining what an album is about that also like not ends, but like there's like other people like seep in like in the like back fourth of the interview, and they're just like talking shit like the entire time. I didn't pick up a lot of stuff, but I heard Saddle Creek fucking Records, man, and Sad Sack Folk out of that little like side conversation that was happening.
Well, you know who does the I guess when I say I've never heard anything else like this on an album, there is one obvious one that I was forgetting. Is Kendrick Lamar does this on is it on Damn?
I think I think you might be right.
There's an album of his where he does an extended sort of conversation with like the ghost of Tupac, I guess. And I wish I feel dumb for bringing this up and then not having looked up which album it's from. But that was the one thing that the one other place where I feel like I had heard something that was kind of along these lines, although obviously he's not like undercutting the entire theme of his album here, where like Connor is kind of like Connor is, I think, sort of actively fighting against some of the interpretation we've been trying to do as we're talking about the album, and against this like even already at this point in his career, this sort of and deification is probably too strong of a word, but this idea of like holding him up as this sort of like, you know, the next Bob Dylan or the next, you know, sort of prophet of emo or whatever.
Yeah, and I feel like this is a theme we've seen before with bands that we've talked about, specifically MCR. You know, kind of seeing this happening to them in real time, where they are becoming this like larger than life thing to other people. And not really knowing what to do with that, but definitely not liking it.
Yeah, for sure. And then it goes into the end of this interview, gets you to he's like, he does this moment at the end of the interview where he's like, I'm gonna play a song that I haven't written yet, which I think is kind of a great phrase. And then you get to a song to pass the time, which is the actual closing track of the album, which I think is a really, really good song. Just kind of a really nice way to end the record. There's some lyrics in here that I think are wonderful. I've locked my actions in the grooves of routine, so I may never be free of this apathy. I don't know.
That is the one I wrote down too. Yeah.
But yeah, so I mean that's what is this laughing thing at the end? I don't know. I don't think I have a ton to say. I'll say about the songs other than that. I think it's a really good closer.
I think it really is. I love how it kind of folds out of the interview on the previous song. And I like how it definitely, it probably was just done in one take live. But it feels that way too. Like it doesn't feel like it was overly practiced. And given that it's a song that wasn't written yet in the fiction, that makes sense.
Yeah. And then for the 25th anniversary of the album, he did do like a piano version of it that I think is also quite nice.
I like that version quite a bit. Yeah.
Yeah. So that's the album. One of the things that I think I kind of skipped over this quote, but it's from one of the retrospective pieces on this album, but describes this album as pre-breakout and pre-expectations, which I don't know if I 100% agree with, just based on the kind of how the sort of the interview and the sort of the attitude that Conor seems to have about it. But it certainly is like kind of the last time that they get to make a record before Conor is an emo celebrity of sorts.
Right.
And I think that's kind of an interesting way to look at this record, as like kind of the last like unfiltered one, maybe, or at least like unself-conscious one.
Yeah. I think that's fair to say.
I don't know. Overall thoughts on the album?
I really like this one a lot. I don't think I like it nearly as much as like some of the later stuff. But I think if I had heard this before Lifted, this would probably be my favorite Bright Eyes album.
Okay.
Because and like it's not necessarily because like I think it's better than any other of their records, just because that would have hit. Let's see, this was 2000, so it would have hit right when I was like entering my teenage years.
The right time to hear it.
I was obviously very sad as a direct result. And it would have, I would have so much nostalgia for it that it would hurt. So
yeah,
it probably would have hit more if I'd heard it like later in my teen years. But again, I was only like listening to a song here and there at that point. So I don't know, but yeah, I enjoyed like actually sitting down with this one quite a bit. Again, like probably not like high up on my list when we get to the end of all of this, but I think it's a really solid, like, this is the most Bright Eyes as I know them this band has sounded thus far in this series.
Yeah, I mean, you're gonna find as we go further on in the series that I am much more into the sort of folk version of Conor Oberst as opposed to the, you know, I'm always perking up whenever the alt country stuff comes in, the pedal steel, that stuff. I really love the next, well, it's been a long time since I've listened to Lifted, so we'll see how I feel about that. But the sort of era from I'm Wide Awake through, you know, Casadega and People's Key is like prime Bright Eyes for me. And so I'm like that. I'm much more excited to go back to those albums, and I think I will be to revisit this one in the future.
That's fair.
But it is again kind of what I said, same thing I said about Letting Off Happiness. Like, it is really cool to see the growth and to see especially, I mean, I'm kind of obsessed with like the production of these records, because it's like it is, you do feel like you're listening to Mike and AJ Mogus kind of figure out how to make records, which is a fun thing to listen to.
I feel like that all lends to what makes this album really, really unique, is because they are figuring it out.
Yeah,
like if you're a seasoned pro and you're making an album like this, it's gonna sound way different.
Right, and also they're early 20s. That's insane.
Yeah, absolutely insane. I was recording with one microphone on occasion when I was this age.
Yeah. Yeah, so there's also a gazillion other loose tracks, comp tracks, you know, stuff like that. We should probably, you know, pick a couple to talk about. So I don't know, any of the, we'll do the EP, but any of the like kind of one-offs or 7-inches or comp tracks that you want to hit in particular?
Let's see. What do I have here?
because there's a Japanese bonus track. There's the In Sound tour support split. There's 2 splits with Sun Ambulance.
There are 2 splits with Sun Ambulance. I kind of like I know that he did this one twice, but I do like I Won't Ever Be Happy Again. And I feel like I kind of like both versions. The earlier one has like some saxophone on it, which I find pretty fun. Weirdly ends with like the sound of a squeaky toy, very incidental, like early Bright Eyes shit happening on that song that I find kind of fun.
Yeah, I like that one. So that one is part of this Don't Be Frightened of Turning the Page EP, which some of the songs, although not including that one, were also on this Oh Holy Fools split with Sun Ambulance. That EP, and specifically Going for the Gold, were my introduction to Bright Eyes. Going for the Gold was, I think I mentioned this a couple episodes ago, was the first Bright Eyes song I ever heard. Certainly the first one that I like fell deeply in love with. And I think, I was just talking up Mike Mogus as a producer, and I really like the sort of dark, dense production of Fevers and Mirrors, but there is an airiness and lightness to the way this EP is recorded and produced that I think is peak Bright Eyes to me. Like just the way that like flute floats above that acoustic guitar in Going for the Gold is just wonderful.
Yeah, that I know that what I'm going to reference came out several years after this, but the flute part specifically on Going for the Gold is some Sufjan Stevens ass shit circa 2005.
Totally, yes.
Like that is the sound of the flutes on or I guess the winds in general on the Predatory Wasp of the Palisades Is Out to Get Us. Like straight up, it might be lifted from this song.
And I love Oh You Are the Roots That Sleep Beneath My Feet. I think that's like it's like an ode to a childhood friend. I think it's a really nice song lyrically, and it's just that melody is kind of perfect. It's just like the way it's so relaxed and so catchy. Like that's where I think you get a little bit of the like, he's got some Bob Dylan in him. He's sort of the successor there. I don't know. There's a lot of good songs.
Yeah, it turns out.
Do you think, okay, so there's that EP ends with Mirrors and a song called Mirrors and Fevers. I kind of thought that song felt like it was might have been a contender to be the opening song on the album or an intro track.
That would make sense because the only place you can put a song like this is at the beginning or the end of something. Because it would not make any fucking sense anyplace else. Right. Because it's effectively a cappella minus there being a sound collage. That continues from Kathy with a K.
Yep.
Yeah, it's cool. I'm a little surprised. It maybe, or I could see an alternate universe where this opens the album for sure.
Yeah, for sure. Let's see. The only other thing I like really want to call out from this stuff is I think the Motion Sickness 7-inch is really good.
Yes, definitely.
Doing a lot of the same things that I like on Don't Be Frightened of Turning the Page. I like the line from the title track of that one. So I want to get myself attached to something bolted down so that these winds of circumstance won't keep blowing me around. Just a good lyric.
Yeah, definitely a very good lyric. One of the other like random tracks that like wasn't necessarily on a like, collection of specifically Bright Eyes songs was Act of Contrition, the one from the Second Thoughts comp. That just has a typewriter in it. Like for half of it, I thought it was scissors until I heard the like return sound.
Your scissors don't have a return key?
No, my scissors do not have a return key, as it turns out. I also this is the kind of thing I'm a sucker for. The lines, so don't believe everything you read in that diary of yours, was that hit pretty good. Especially while listening to a Bright Eyes song.
Yeah, definitely. So there's other stuff that is like out there from this era, but like there's too much of it to go through every song in detail.
I do actually, before we move on, I do want to touch on I Will Be Grateful for This Day. I think that's a really good song. I don't need to say much more about it that, but
I agree.
That one definitely influenced people like Julian Baker, like directly.
Yes, definitely. And then there's like all of these. There's a companion EP that came out in this was 2022 ish. I think that this is the least interesting of the companion EPs that I have heard, both the ones we've covered so far and the ones that we will cover later in the series. I just think that all of these reimaginings are pretty predictable. Like the song choices and the arrangements are just pretty predictable, or I just don't love the songs they picked that much. I don't know. What do you think of this one, the companion EP?
I think I see what you're saying. I'm not offended by it by any means. And obviously I love that Phoebe Bridgers is on this a lot, because I love Phoebe Bridgers. But yeah, like there's not a lot surprises me on this one. I definitely will give you that. Like I think all of these are like nice, competent arrangements. But nothing goes too off the rails. I think like one of the biggest notes I had was the this version of A Scale, a Mirror, and those indifferent clocks has like a Lou Reed vibe in a way, which is like kind of a not a huge departure from the original, but like an interesting direction that it got taken.
Yeah,
But
I felt
yeah,
like that one of all of these, that one has like the least changes from the original, I think.
yeah,
Like it
yeah.
just feels like kind of a better sounding version of it. Whereas I mean, at least even if I don't like love the arrangement changes, like at least like Halai and Spindle and stuff like that they're obviously going for something very different. I mean the Curious Girl one on this is I think basically just the B-side, the Again version, um, which is like cool to have in better quality, I guess.
Yeah.
But yeah, it just this is not a companion EP that feel like I'm gonna be like I gotta go revisit that. Like I probably definitely will with some of the songs on the Letting Off the Happiness one.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, that one was transformative in a way
Yeah,
that like I don't think it's mean to say that this is not. Like
right.
those songs were ripe for it.
Yeah. And I mean, maybe this just says something about how accomplished, they were as a band making the album originally. That like maybe there wasn't a ton to improve on or change on a lot of these.
Maybe, yeah.
Yeah. All right. I think that's all the 2001 Bright Eyes to talk about. There's a lot of it. There's more you can seek out, listener, if you would like. But you got a random recommendation for this week?
I do. And I kind of mentioned this when we were talking before the show, but I feel like I'm pulling from the same pool of people that I always pull from, but I haven't talked about this person specifically, so I feel fine about that. My pick for this week is the new M. Sage record, Tender Waiting. It just came out a little while ago on Revenge International. That's RVNG International, which I did not know until like earlier this year is pronounced Revenge. Great label. M. Sage is a former Chicagoan who makes experimental ambient adjacent music. He This album has a lot of clarinet on it, and I really love that. Like both clarinet just being played and clarinet being processed by like modular synths and stuff like that. There's also a lot of piano on this record, like there are with most of his records. He's a very accomplished pianist. Yeah, I don't know if you're into people using instruments in cool ways, you're probably going to enjoy this record. His last record, Paradise Crick, was a really fun like attempt to synthetically recreate songs that sound like they are based on the sounds of nature. I don't know that this one has quite the same concept, but it sonically it's just real nice. So if you've ever heard a clarinet and enjoyed it, I'd highly recommend Tender Waiting by M. Sage,
Okay.
aka Matthew Sage, former owner of Patient Sounds, currently runs a multimedia project called Cached Media, who releases a lot of cool stuff.
Cool.
Yeah, what you got?
I am going to recommend the new EP from a band called Love, stylized as all one word. This EP is
Perfect.
called Thriving Season. This band I discovered because their guitar player is also the touring guitarist for Agi, a band that I love, who we will be seeing in approximately 3 weeks.
Yeah.
And this album or this EP, I thought it just kind of knocked me out because I was like, oh, I'm just going to listen to this because Ian's in the band. I don't have no idea what this is going to sound like. And it sounds a lot like this sort of big, expansive pop rock stuff that I would listen to a lot in high school. I'm trying to think of like a good like comp band, like As Tall as Lions, maybe something in that realm, or like I feel like it reminds me of a lot of stuff that I like bands that would play at Cornerstone Festival. So it was a lot of like kind of Christian contemporary influence, but also kind of like the Tooth and Nail Records bands. They kind of all had this sound, and I think they do a really, really good version of this sound. The songs are awesome. The vocalist rules. And then the closing track is also this really nice piano song called New Year Theme that went right on my New Year's playlist.
Of course.
I think it's a wonderful little 5-song EP, and I'm excited to hear more from this band in the future.
Heck yeah, I have gone and saved that immediately because that sounds like it's going to be real good to me.
Cool. All right. Then we will be back next week talking about Lifted, or the long album title that I'm not going to remember off the top of my head. But this is it's a turning point in the Bright Eyes catalog for sure. So yeah, lots to say about that album next week. In the meantime, you can follow us on Instagram at noisefloorpod, or find us on the internet at noisefloorpodcast.com, or send us emails at noisefloorpodcast@gmail.com. And we will talk to you next week.
See you next week.